start working on certain skills, certain grounding skills, certain maybe breath skills when it's easy, when you're feeling great, when you're not stressed out and you're not overstimulated, and you've already built some muscle memory so that in the moment, it comes a lot more naturally.
Do you miss having time for Jesus and yourself, but you're drowning in the responsibilities of motherhood? If so, you're in the right place. Hi, I'm Cheryl, wife, girl mom, and Jesus follower. I learned the not so secret ways to become the mom my girls needed by prioritizing Jesus back into my mom life and reclaiming my identity in Christ. If you're ready to build faith while washing dishes, rediscover your identity, and love yourself like your babies do, grab your earbuds and lock that bathroom door for a minute alone. It's time for Mom. Hi, beautiful. Welcome to the Time for Mom podcast. I'm your host, Cheryl, and today I am super excited to be bringing you another guest interview. Today we are talking with Miss Kelsey Red. She is wife, mom of 4 little kids, an adventurer, and most importantly, a disciple of Jesus Christ. She is the host of the Intentional Motherhood podcast, and if you haven't listened to it, you really should. There will be a note in the show notes where she helps busy Christian moms create presence and purpose at home through simple mindfulness routines and sustainable spiritual practices. After a decade as a holistically trained clinical mental health counselor, Kelsey's focus shifted from therapy into motherhood and spirituality, helping women align with God, shift their mindset, and find joy in motherhood without doing even more things. As a stay-at-home mom herself, she's passionate about helping women create lives they love and really enjoy motherhood. Welcome to the podcast, Kelsey.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you here because I have not actually had anybody talk about this topic, which we're going to be talking about nervous system regulation and mindset shifts to stop those negative thought patterns and cycles of overwhelm. And I mean, if you are a mom and you have not reacted or overreacted to your child's behavior, let me know because I might need to talk to you. And Kelsey's going to be talking us through some tools on that.
Yep. And it's definitely something I relate to. I was thinking as we were preparing this that there's so much to say, and it's all like the ideal, right? This is what we're working our hardest to do as often as possible, and nobody does it all the time, and nobody does it perfectly, but we are just doing our best.
Yes, and then going, "Oh man, I did that really again?" Yeah,
Yep.
that's not good either. So, when you're a mom, you are dealing with so many things. You're dealing with decision fatigue, sleep deprivation, whacked out hormones, lack of time to do anything that you wanted to do, and whininess and neediness. And a lot of moms feel stuck in this cycle of overwhelm, like I said, negative thought spirals, and reacting to their child's behavior. What does that spiral actually look like in everyday motherhood?
We can all relate to this spiral. You wake up and you're planning on having a great day, but maybe you just didn't get quite as much sleep as you wanted, and maybe you were woken up by a crying child, or maybe the breakfast becomes a huge mess. And right off the bat, first thing in the morning, you're already frustrated. Your day is not going the way you had planned, and you had expectations for it to go. And if you are not regulated yourself because of many of the things you mentioned, like hormones or sleep or your own nutrition, all those things, all of a sudden your dysregulation is becoming more of an issue than even your child's behaviors. I know there are times that my children are behaving horribly and I'm somehow like in the Zen zone. Whereas there are other times where my children are behaving not even that badly, but just normal. But because I'm dysregulated, then I'm suddenly lashing out at them and, yelling at them, snapping at them. And it's more about what's going on inside of us as the mom, inside of our own brain and nervous system than actually what our kids are doing. Once we kind of get dysregulated, if we can't find a moment to step away and regulate ourselves, then the dysregulation just grows and grows and gets worse and worse. And there becomes a lot of self-fulfilling negative thoughts and beliefs. If we don't get a hold of them quickly, can kind of end the day where we just feel shame. We feel like a failure. We feel a lot of that mom guilt and we feel really discouraged and maybe even depressed. And then we go to bed thinking like, I can't do this again in the morning, and then it starts to bleed over into the next day. And so that's the spiral. That's that spiral where it just it maybe starts small and it gets worse and worse and worse, and it goes on and on and on. And it's because we have not been able to regulate ourselves when we need to.
That is definitely something that I have recognized myself doing. Yeah, the Zen state out there. Yeah, you're right. There's times it's like I should just be overreacting, but I'm not. And then there's other times where they like look at me wrong and bah! Mean mom comes out. So
Exactly.
definitely see that. Oftentimes, I would say that we do recognize that we get into that spiral, the negative thought patterns, overreacting. But by the time we realize it, we are near the bottom of the spiral, I feel like. So, how on earth could a mom start recognizing what is happening before it's already been going on a day or two or week or month or so?
No matter at what point you are in the cycle or the spiral, being able to identify and articulate where you're at is going to be the best thing you can do. At any point, whether it's first step in the spiral or way down, if you can recognize, like, wow, I am so dysregulated, or even like, I am so discouraged and depressed, and I have been for 5 days now, being able to literally identify it and articulate it, hopefully to someone who is loving and supportive to you, like maybe your spouse or even in prayer or to a trusted friend, and to be able to say, like, man, I am just having a really hard time. That act of articulating it actually puts our prefrontal cortex, the executive functioning part of our brain, online and starts to help get us out of the dysregulation of the limbic system where we're just stuck in the flight or freeze response, that stress response. So at any point, that's where you need to go. However, I like to use the analogy of an Olympic athlete is not going to perform their most important sport for the first time at the Olympics. They're going to have spent hours and months and days and years practicing the same movements over and over again so that by the time it's game day or it's race day, it is so natural to them. They don't have to try so hard because it's muscle memory, right? And it's the same thing for moms. I tell moms, start working on certain skills, certain grounding skills, certain maybe breath skills when it's easy, when you're feeling great, when you're not stressed out and you're not overstimulated, so that when those moments come, then you're able to say, oh, yeah, I know that I like to take this deep breath. Oh, yeah, I know that in these moments, my brain does really good if I can just count to 10. And you've already built some muscle memory so that in the moment, it comes a lot more naturally.
That is incredible advice to start practicing and rehearsing those healthy habits before you reach an unhealthy state. It reminded me of like eating good food before your health is a wreck. You're just kind of
Yeah.
maintaining your mental health
Mhm.
before you're in a difficult situation, whether it's with your kids or just in life, because that happens.
Exactly.
So that actually almost answered my next question. What simple step can a mom do to start interrupting the pattern? So you said we need to rehearse and practice those regulations. So what would be a regulation? Like what could they start doing to get those regulating habits in place?
The most important thing that moms can do to help them be ready for the hard moments is to practice having the ability to recognize and be aware of their present moment condition. So to be able to notice and name non-judgmentally, just say, wow, I'm feeling really triggered right now. Or wow, I feel my heart rate starting to skyrocket right now because I'm getting really frustrated. To be able to actually tap into what is going on inside of their body, or even just feel like, I feel so tense. I just feel myself wanting to clench my fists. I'm so frustrated or angry. To be able to name those and mindfully just be aware and notice what they're going through is the first step, because that gives you just that moment of separation between, the child's behavior and your reaction. You put into that space a moment of observation and a moment of noticing what you're going through, and you just say, let me calm down for 1 second. Let me recognize what I'm about to do. Let me recognize how I'm feeling at this moment. And now let me choose how I want to respond rather than just reacting.
That reminds me of the technique of having your child practice a correct response after they definitely don't have a correct response. It reminds me
Mhm.
a lot of doing that, but only with yourself,
Mhm.
preferably before the incorrect response. But
Right. Right, and sometimes we don't catch it, right? That's real life, and that's being part of being human is we're going to have those moments where we don't catch it until after the fact, and then we say, "Oh, I reacted in a way I didn't want to." And it's actually really beneficial to express that to our child, to be able to say to our child, "You know what? Mom got really frustrated and I yelled when I shouldn't have. I didn't take a moment to calm down before I reacted, and I'm sorry." To be able to apologize to your child and show them the respect and allow them to see that you make mistakes, you own your mistakes, and you try to do better is not a bad thing. It's actually a great thing because your children are going to do the same thing. And if you're modeling it to them already, it's going to be a lot easier to teach them to take accountability and apologize because they feel like, oh, yeah, this is just what we do in our family. If you make a mistake, you own your part and you apologize for it and you try to do better. So it's actually great for teaching children regulation and ownership as well.
yes, that is something that we've started doing in our family is that okay if mommy acted that way? And they're like,
Mhm.
no. Like, then it's not okay for you to act that way.
Yeah, that's a great point. Exactly.
So when I had kids, it introduced so many things that I never ever knew about myself. There were emotional triggers, there were memories I didn't realize, and there was reactions that I never would have anticipated coming from myself. So
Mhm.
how can a mom start working through those actions, those reactions, and the guilt that comes from overreacting?
I just love that you're asking this question because it brings up something that I talk a lot about, which is that parenting is actually more about reparenting yourself than it is about parenting your child. Because there's so much, like you said, it's amazing to see your own little inner child be outside of you in a miniature you version. I have a daughter who is exactly me when I was a child. And so everything she does can either be very triggering or I'm very sensitive to her because I'm like, yes, she is me and I am her and we are just the same person and sometimes that can be really frustrating, but sometimes it can be very beautiful because it allows you to reparent yourself and say, wait a second, what are these triggers and where are they coming from? And to actually take some time, I encourage moms to do this, is to take some time to journal and really start to audit what are your most triggering behaviors from your child, because that will give you a great insight into when you are probably going to overreact and start going into this spiral so that you can be prepared for it. I know because of just the way I was raised that seeing people not help when I'm hard at work, like cleaning the kitchen after dinner, is very triggering to me. I get really frustrated when I'm like, why am I the only one cleaning up dinner when we all ate? Why is no one helping me? And so, because I know that about myself, we've actually created systems in our home where everyone has after dinner chores that help to alleviate that pressure on me and allow me to be more aware that this is something that's going to frustrate me. So let's just make sure that we have a system to make it run smoother so that I don't have to get triggered about this every single night and just wonder why I'm so frustrated every night after dinner because of that awareness. So actually, you're right. There's so much that comes up about our own inner child and our own experience with our parents and having to reparent ourselves and do it in a way that heals our inner wounds while doing our best to not create new wounds in the children, the new generation that we're raising. I'm going to butcher the quote, but I loved this book that talked about parenting is all about modeling being parented by God. And I love that idea because it allows you to recognize that what you're actually trying to do with your children emulates the relationship you're trying to have with God, where you are constantly in the child position trying to do your best and making mistakes. And how does he discipline us? He disciplines us with love and with mercy and with grace and with forgiveness. And how do we then take that model of parenting and parent our children that same way?
Yeah, that's motherhood in a nutshell.
Yeah, exactly.
There's been so many things that I was like, oh. That's what I look like to God. That's not nice.
Yeah.
You mentioned journaling and auditing your triggers. So once you do that, that is when the rehearsal and practicing would come into play, correct?
You should be doing the practicing at all times. Just like you would take care of any other type of hygiene, personal hygiene, there's some like mental hygiene exercises that you should probably just be doing every day, which maybe it's just as you're waking up or falling asleep, you just intentionally, mindfully take 10 deep breaths. It can be as simple as that. Or maybe it's just as you are washing your face, you really just try to savor that moment and stay present in the moment. That can happen at all times, but I definitely recommend some deeper dives at some point where, yeah, you're actually in your journal and you're maybe noticing. One thing I suggested that people can do is like look at the past week and notice what were the times that I really did overreact. And is there a common theme? Does it happen to be at a certain time of day when maybe I'm getting hangry or maybe I am not a morning person and so I know that I typically overreact in the morning or is it a certain behavior like I mentioned my example that just I know really triggers me for whatever reason and see if you can identify some of those in the past week situations that have come up and then use that as a guide to say okay then how can I now either make systems in the home to create a smoother transition around this time or understand that I need to get myself fed a snack before I start, giving out other snacks, or possibly taking the approach of understanding, like, okay, this is an inner child wound that I'm dealing with that I need to heal myself around and recognize that this isn't my child, it's actually my own issue. So, how can I heal that in myself rather than taking it out on my child?
That is really good insight because I've noticed the things that I'm the most careful not to do with my children are the wounds that I carry the deepest.
Mhm.
So that is very sound. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
One of
And the
the
fact that you already are trying not that you're being careful not to do those things shows that you are aware of your own wounds, at least to some extent, to know that this is what I'm sensitive to, so I'm going to be careful with it with my children.
Thank you. I'm glad that I'm doing something right. One piece of advice that I was given recently that I fully intend on doing is that we're going to traumatize our children no matter what, but it isn't going to be the same trauma that we had. So when they're an adult, ask them what it was so you can ask forgiveness and heal that relationship before they're, 50 and you're 80. It was a really insightful advice that I hadn't really considered of a parent just stopping and listening to their child. But I honestly wonder if we could do that when they're a little younger because, like you said, we do tend to overreact based on our own wounds, and we need to apologize for those when we recognize that it's happened.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So you on this a little bit. So how does faith and your relationship with God play a role in breaking all of those mental and emotional cycles and trauma responses and triggers? How does your faith play a role in that?
Well, I think several ways. They're in some ways completely inseparable, right? Because it is through the grace of God that we can do better every day. I remember we talked a little bit about this before we were recording that I remember a time in my motherhood when I was just at rock bottom and I had 3 babies under 2 years old, and it literally felt like some days I couldn't even get out of bed. It was like, I can't do this. There's literally not enough of me to care for all these beings that are relying on me. And I remember those prayers of like, "Please, God, just give me enough energy to get out of bed and go get the crying baby." It was like every step, like, okay, God, please give me the energy now to just get everyone fed breakfast. And I think sometimes we think of God's grace as a little bit more abstract, and we forget that actually it is the enabling power that allows us to go from breath to breath and from moment to moment. And so having that relationship with your Savior and being able to call on Him and rely on His power to encourage you and like in the truest definition of encourage, like actually to make you stronger every moment of the day is one thing. But I would say that the other thing that has been the most helpful for me is to recognize our true identity. My identity as a daughter of God, and then also in turn, my children's identity as children of God, that I have a stewardship to take care of, and to recognize that these are God's precious children that He has entrusted to me and that I get to spend a small moment of time with to help them connect to their heavenly parent, and to learn what that parenting relationship should look like. Because I'm their model of God when they're so little. And it's the whole point of parenting is to teach them how to have a relationship with their God and to recognize that if these are His children, then He knows the best thing I can do for them. He knows more than I do how to best discipline them, how to best teach them, how to best relate to them. And He knows me better than anyone else. So He can give the best advice as to what I, with my own wounds and traumas and issues, can do to help my children with all their unique personality traits. So I would say those are my two most critical aspects of faith and my relationship with God that guide my parenting.
That is amazing because identity is so hard, especially when you become a mom. And I love that you're focusing on not just remembering your identity, but teaching your kids what their true identity is. That is so cool.
Thank you.
So I want to circle back because I finally remembered a question I was going to ask you when you were talking about naming the emotions.
Mhm.
And I don't know if everybody does this, but I try to walk my kids through, okay, what are you feeling? And of course, they don't know. But I mean, so oftentimes that is where we start of what are we feeling? I honestly don't know, especially when we're in the bottom of that spiral of I have no idea what I'm feeling. So how do you start when you really don't know? How do you start finding that emotion so you can start digging your way out of those spirals?
When you're in that state of just I don't even know what I feel, but I just feel bad. I know I feel bad, right?
Yes.
Then the one thing you can do is start tapping into your body because your body is going to be reacting in a certain way. So when you can start feeling into your body and saying, I don't know what emotion I'm feeling, but I know that my shoulders feel like they're up to my ears and my jaw is clenched and my stomach feels icky, then you can start there. And you can just start with noticing how is my body reacting? And you can start just relaxing into your body, one body part at a time. Maybe, you take the example that I just gave and you say, like, okay, well, I'm just going to do a couple of deep breaths and try to relax my jaw. I'm just going to take a couple deep breaths and try to let my shoulders fall. This is an exercise that allows you to a little bit disidentify with the overwhelming feelings because sometimes we become so, it's like we're immersed in the emotion and then then we feel like we can't escape because it feels like we're just drowning in it. But when we can just do one step at a time, just naming what's going on in our body, even and taking a moment to relax, then we can start to separate the big overwhelming feelings from this moment. Okay, in this moment, I can take a deep breath. In this moment, I can choose to focus on something else, whether it's something physical like my breath, or whether it's maybe even a physical like take a sip of water or feel your feet on the ground that actually grounds you in that present moment rather than the overwhelming emotional experience. And you can start to just say, oh, yeah, okay, I'm not this feeling. That doesn't identify me. That's not who I am. I'm a person. I'm grounded. I'm taking breaths and I feel bad. But right now, I'm focusing on maybe a moment of gratitude or a perspective shift of, a prayer. God, please renew my mind in this moment. All of that just separates us from the emotion rather than getting overly identified with it.
That is so good of taking stock. I mean, just like honestly, we have to deal with our kids. If you don't know your emotion, okay, how's your tummy feeling? Because my kids deal with anxiety. I don't know where they get it from. Um, they deal with anxiety that they get quite honestly. At least my oldest one does. Of okay, what are you feeling? My tummy. Okay, that's probably this. Why are let's take some deep breaths. Let's think about something else. Like you said earlier, of almost healing your inner kid by treating your inner kid like a kid.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, exactly. The same exercises you would do with your child, you just do with yourself.
Yeah. Except more adultish because, we're boring like that. Can't.
And one thing that is really helpful is to recognize that there are multiple parts in action at all time within you. And so I'll do this with my children. And again, it's a great exercise to do with yourself, is to say like, okay, well, part of you feels really worried right now, but there's also a part of you that, is calm. And sometimes I'll ask my child, like, is there another part of you that is feeling a different way? And they'll say, well, yeah, there's part of me that's, thinking about playing with my friends tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, so there's part of you that's excited about something. Any other parts? And I'll try to help them understand like a part of you hopefully is feeling loved because you're cuddling and talking with mom right now. So there can be a part of you that's worried, and there can be a part of you that's happy, and there can be a part of you that's loved, and they can all be in the room at the same time. We can just acknowledge that and then hopefully say, well, it's time to go to sleep. I have to do this with a certain child, so I'm kind of talking through how I do it with him. So I'll say, it's time to go to sleep. So maybe the part of you that's really worried, you could ask him to stop talking, and we could just mostly listen to the part of you that's really tired and really calm. Could we talk to that part for a while and just help him to recognize like there's always a multitude of experiences going on at any a given moment. And we actually have the ability to choose which one we focus on.
Kind of like what Paul was talking about on the take captive every thought rather than, yeah, he doesn't say don't let your don't let your emotions rule you, but I guess he does take captive every thought because we can choose who we give that microphone to.
Exactly. Which is such an important skill for children and adults to learn.
Wait, we're supposed to control ourselves?
It's harder than it seems, right?
It is so hard, especially when you get those cute little button pushers in the mix.
Exactly.
Oh, not even my husband can push my buttons quite like my kids. So this has been such a great conversation, Kelsey. So as we wrap up, just like one thing that you would really want her to take away today.
I would want every mom to know that she's doing the best job she can. By the fact that she's listening to this podcast, the fact that she is aware enough to want to do better means she's already doing an amazing job. And I would just tell any mom out there that awareness is the first step, and that being able to notice and be mindful of what's happening is actually like 90% of the step. Like if you can do that one thing, you're already 90% of the way there. And by God's grace, you can change who you are. Like I have been thinking about this a lot this last Easter season of Christ promises to make us new. He never said that if you had trauma in your life, then like you're stuck that way for life. He always told us that we can be renewed in him. We can be reborn. We can be a new person. It's never too late. You're never too late, and you're never too far gone for God to redeem you.
That is such a good reminder. Thank you so much, Kelsey, for that. So as we close this, how can they find you and connect with you?
Well, I would love for them to come find my podcast. It's called Intentional Motherhood, and we talk a lot about this kind of thing, about how to be more intentional in our being present and having a purpose in our home and feeling that peace and joy in motherhood. And I also have a website, creatingintentionalmothers.com, where they can have access to a ton of free resources that I've created. They can sign up for my newsletter so they never miss anything. I've got courses, and I have one specific course that's actually tailored all around this exact topic. It's called Stop the Spiral, and it teaches moms these exact skills of how to separate from our emotions and have these grounding practices, make the mindset shifts so that these spirals don't take you out for days or weeks. You can stop them in minutes. So they have access to that, and there's hopefully going to be some links in the show notes that they can grab that, or again, my website, creatingintentionalmothers.com.
There will be so many links in the show notes.
Perfect.
All the links everywhere.
Perfect. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you again, Kelsey, for coming on and speaking with us about this. And yes, there will be links to her podcast, link to her website, a discount code for that amazing course in case you're interested, and also contact. All right, beautiful. Until next week, I just pray that you are able to find a tool from this podcast and start interrupting those things that we just regret immediately and have to apologize for. I just pray that you're able to take a step back, name those emotions, and start moving into a healthier emotional place in motherhood. Love, Cheryl. Hey, beautiful. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, would you take 30 seconds to share this with a mom who's wading through those mounds of laundry and dishes and wishing for just a little me time? Also, please leave a quick review for the show on Apple Podcasts. It makes my day to know this podcast has helped you. Well, it's time for me to wash more dishes and cook more food. I'll meet you next Wednesday for another episode. Until then, may the God of grace fill you with his peace.